Hey everybody, so I'm going to start off by saying I'm doing Midsummer by Ari Aster, and I'm starting this whole thing off by saying did not enjoy it that much. But it's a lot easier to review movies you didn't enjoy than it is to review ones you did enjoy. It's just that last week I enjoyed both of them, so I chose the one I enjoyed the most. Anyway, um, what stuck with me for the most about this movie was the fact that everything was bright, which is very unique. Most horror movies that I like. I'm an 80s, 70s, 80s slasher flick kind of guy. Most horror movies I like are shot almost entirely in the dark. Or, yeah, almost entirely in the dark. And this movie was almost fully set in the sun during the day, which is a very unique choice and a very bold choice for a horror movie. Um, instead of instead of relying on jump scares, blood, gore, that kind of thing, they relied a lot more upon transformation through indoctrination, disguised as a kind of empowerment from the cult, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't. I'm trying to make it though. So let's start this off. At the beginning of the movie, Danny dealt with a massive family tragedy. And she was in a relationship where she basically kept apologizing because she felt like actually, no, she didn't feel like she was straight up just being made to feel like she was a burden. But she was constantly having to apologize for needing the most basic emotional support. And the way she was filmed early on was always in these dark, tight rooms. The walls were closing in on her, and she was suffocating. But luckily, she got invited to Sweden with the group. Invited to Sweden with the group, and she got liberated. When they got to Sweden, the mood of the entire movie changed. Instead of being this weird blue scale, everything closed in, it became a light, I want to say. Everything became brighter and more pastel. The constant daylight was almost dreamlike. It was disorienting us and made it hard to tell what was actually real throughout the movie. As the rituals that Danny was going through unfolded, yes, that's a word, unfolded, Danny kind of began to fall into the community as, again, she's in a serious emotional, I want to say rut. I don't feel like I should, but I'm going to say rut. She was in a serious emotional rut. Her partner was basically making her a burden, or feel like she was a burden. And the only people who were really helping her were the cults. And, well, you don't like that. You don't want the cult to help you, because if the cult's helping you, you're getting indoctrinated. A moment that really stuck with me was the May Queen dance. The camera moved along with Danny as she was dancing. It was nearly euphoric or liberating. And, most importantly, it's the first time we see her smile. After she wins, the community starts to treat her like she belongs. And that's not good for her, because that's the moment she loses. She felt like she belonged, she felt like she was chosen, and it was just a big game of manipulation, which is a very normal thing for a cult to do. It's a very common tactic in cults to make one specific person feel like they are the most important person to have ever lived. It's a huge thing. I've done some research into cults out of just pure interest, and every time you gotta make them feel like an individual. You gotta separate them from the rest of their connections, make sure they are their own individual, and make sure the individual cannot exist without you. And, well, they did that almost to a T, where she could not exist without them. One of the most powerful scenes was the very ending, where Christian was paralyzed and was put inside of a bear carcass, and Danny was dressed in flowers, and after finally being seen, she decided to sacrifice him. It was Frankly, it was horrifying, but it gave her the semblance of control. She goes from being a sobbing coward to smiling as someone burns before her. And I often hear this stuff being cited as empowering. I don't think so. I don't believe this should be considered an empowering moment. I feel like this should be considered a fall from grace. The way I like to think about it is, at the very beginning of the movie, before everything goes wrong for her in her life, she was on the good. She was in the side of the light. The moment someone died, she got pulled into, or the moment that her family died and she was invited to Sweden, she was pulled into the Midway. And in the Midway, she is emotionally vulnerable. She can be influenced and anything can happen. And little by little, she was getting pulled along. And at some point, she stopped resisting the pull and just went over to the cult. And, well, she was fully indoctrinated by the cult, which is just a shame. She seems to think she found healing when her fate is ultimately to be like the old people during, I think, the sequence around the 57-minute mark, to like an hour and 2 minutes. I think that's about the area where they were just hurling themselves off cliffs. I'm like 90% sure that's how her life's gonna end. Anyway, thanks for listening.